Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audios, one episode a day, 7 days per week. Well, usually 7 days per week, but the last few episodes have been late. But we are back on track, I hope, for a while now, with the next Doctor Who story on today, the 26th of April, when we will be beginning The Claws of Axos, written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin in their debut serial for the show. And I mention that because they are pretty famous for writing Sarah Jane's Exit and writing in K9 as a character much later on. But this is their first story with The Claws of Axos, episode 1. And the first thing you notice about this story is, well, the opening. The opening of the story, well, it's a very interesting sort of deal because you have the Doctor still on Earth, and we have Unit having to deal with the fact that the Doctor doesn't really have any records of citizenship on Earth. I mean, it's okay because he's a space-time traveler, so this hasn't really come up before, and there's this guy, Mr. Chin, who's coming in to investigate, and he's an asshole. Like, he's a really big asshole. Like, that's his character. His character is, Mr. Chin, I am an asshole, you will hate me, because he's greedy and awful. And he's sort of, I guess he's a parody of the Conservative Party in Britain. I don't know. I don't know British politics, especially British politics in 1971. Yeah, this was 1971. So I don't quite know how accurate this guy is to reality, but he's a fun character to hate. Like, he's a lot of fun. And you have this whole thing where, because we open with a shot of a spaceship that looks kind of like a sex toy. Not gonna lie. Again, some of the effects just look really dirty in this episode. So there's probably gonna be, this may not be one of the best episodes for kids, because they might giggle at it. But you have this spaceship, and it comes into the Earth's atmosphere, and, the first instinct is, we're gonna shoot it down! And then it basically says, hey, Axos calling Earth, immediate help requested, someone help us, please. So we open the story with the villain, the antagonists, because they're going to be antagonists, mainly because it's sort of the audience gets to learn that they're antagonists later on in this specific episode, but I think it's going to take a while for the characters to know, because, well, it's that's sort of part of the thing where it's like, the part of the message of the story is, don't accept free handouts, because usually, don't expect things that say no strings attached, because usually there are strings attached that you're not seeing. Like, that's the whole message. But it's like, okay, well, so the Doctor's like, hey, don't shoot it down, they need help. Like, they're not trying to hurt you, they are just trying to get assistance. That is why they are calling Earth. Like, they are probably a decent species. So they cause freak weather conditions when they go down. The spaceship crashes into the Earth. There's this hobo called Pigbin Josh. I know that because his name is in the credits, and he is hilarious. He gets absorbed by Axos, and that scene is just hilarious. This is sort of when we realize, they're probably not good because they're just killing a random person. Also, there's this American Bill Filer who's working on the case to try to find the Master. He kind of has this weird romantic thing with Joe Grant that really doesn't go anywhere. And this is a story where the episode at least, Joe gets pushed to the background a little bit. The cliffhanger involves her following the Doctor and everybody into Axos, getting herself lost because they went up ahead and they didn't know she was following her, and like a spaghetti monster comes out of nowhere, which is Axos' true form. Trust me, I really like this episode. This episode is great, but it is campy, and it's not perfect. Like, it's got problems, and it's got a little bit of a pacing problem. It's a little long. Also, like, they kind of waste their Master reveal. Like, I probably would have waited to reveal the Master and Bill as prisoners until episode 2. Like, that doesn't need to be here yet. It's not the best way of doing things. Like, you could have waited, hold off on that thought, and let it sink into the audience sort of where the story is going before we get the real confirmation that, yeah, they're pretty evil. And it's not just they might be evil, but they also might be good. So, no, they're pretty evil. It should have been, because they capture the Master and Bill Filer, and they offer They are yellow people. They look, I guess they're supposed to look sort of angelic, which, I mean, I kind of get. I like the set for Axos, though some of the CSO is really, really dodgy. But yeah, I like the set. And I like the guy who voices Axos, the Axon's Bernard Holly. He does a great job. They offer Axonite, and it's a miracle. It will end world hunger, and it sort of seems too good to be true. But then of course we have Joe is followed in, gets attacked by the spaghetti monster, and that's the end of the Claws of Axos episode 1. I mean, again, the episode is paced all over the place. It's a great episode, but because of the pacings and, let's be honest, some of the really, really bad effects, even for Doctor Who standards of the time, I'm going to give the Claws of Axos episode 1 an 8 out of 10. Alright, it is the 27th of April, 2018, and I just finished watching episode 2 of the Claws of Axos. And this episode, is at least on par with the first one. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to work out the score as I go with recording my thoughts, because I have some thoughts about this episode. Mainly, the cliffhanger resolution is nice. They sort of hand wave away that Joe may have just seen, like, the ship moving, when it's actually then revealed that, like, by the end of the episode, that Axos is all one great thing, like one big thing, like it's a single organism, and it's like it's gonna kill everybody. Like, though there isn't a lot of science behind it, just because this is a very heavy on the science fiction story, mainly because you have like this molecule, and you have the Doctor. Something that I find interesting is that what the Doctor does is one of the first things he does is, well, if Axonite is this great, amazing energy source, which, that's what the claim is. The claim is that it's an amazing, great energy source, and, it's going to provide energy and allow the world to have a bit of, just this extreme, get over its energy crisis and help with food. The Doctor's like, well, yeah, maybe I can get it to fix my TARDIS, So he gets the TARDIS brought down, and you have this Doctor who's not the Doctor, but this, like, Professor Doctor working with him, who's, like, sort of, like, scoffs at his ideas, and he ends up dead by the end of the episode, which is nice, because he was annoying. You also have the Axos sending a copy of Bill Filer to try to, like, stop the Doctor from experimenting too much, because Axos didn't quite think their plan through of, like, well, we need to get Axonite to work, but they're going to test it, and we can't tell them not to test it, because that would sort of make things suspicious. So we're just going to try to get them to stop testing it correctly. It's kind of an interesting sort of ploy, like, well, that's just sort of how we're going to work this, which I really like that. That sort of makes a lot of sense. It makes sense. Though I do have to say that there's a bit of padding in this episode, mainly with the Master escaping. He infiltrates UNIT, which is really cool, but he escapes and he jumps onto a train, which is just a long sequence, and it takes a while. I really like this direction, though, because it's Michael Ferguson's the last story that he directs. I think, yeah, this is the last story Michael Ferguson directs. I don't think he does anymore. He's really good at doing the story. I really like his direction. It's a lot of fun to watch. But my problem, and this is my big problem with the story, is, again, the episode just has a lot of padding. And it doesn't really get in the way too much. It's still a great episode. I still really, really enjoy this one. So, like, you have the Doctor. He like a really good cliffhanger where the Doctor comes to the realization that Axos is all one thing, and then he gets the copy of Bill and puts it in the light accelerator. It decelerizes. Then it starts this process where it just turns back into, like, the orange spaghetti monster thing, and starts to attack the cast, which is a really, really good sequence. Like, that sequence is solid. Like, it's a solid sequence. It knows it's really good. It's very, very, very much a, sort of, well, we're in trouble now. It's just a very good sequence. You sort of have Mr. Chin sort of representing the government being just ineffectual, and a character that you love to hate just because the guy's like, well, we just need to get this out in the world now. We don't need to test it. And it's like, okay. Basically, he's the one who's probably going to screw everything up. Like, he's taking authority away from Unit, even though, Unit has more experience with aliens than anyone else, because they dealt with the Cybermen, the Autons, the Yeti. Well, not the Yeti. They were technically not formed yet, but the Brigadier dealt with the Yeti. But yeah, the Cybermen, the Autons, twice with the Autons, the staying more situation. And, they obviously have more to deal with, because and also, well, and the ambassadors from the Ambassador's death. So, he's one of those characters who gets in the way, and you love it, because he's just so bad. Like, he's so bad. So, with that being said, I think I'm going to give The Claws of Axos, Episode 2, a 9 out of 10, because just because of that padding, it just sort of misses out on the 10. Alright, it is the same day, 27th of April, 2018, and I just finished watching Episode 3 of The Claws of Axos, which, now don't get me wrong, this is a great episode, it's a really good episode, but it is the weakest episode thus far of the story, mainly because, well, it's doing the thing where it's like, we need to pad things out for a third episode, which was, which is common with the format, it's something that a lot of stories fall into. Like, there's the trap that a lot of stories will fall into, which is that, well, because we think we know what we want to do with this story, we're gonna stop. We're gonna, sort of, we don't really have enough to fill 4 episodes, so we're gonna just sort of stretch. Well, third episode, just like, we need to keep interest in this story going, and we need to finish. Again, it's a great episode. You have a lot of interesting stuff. The doctor and Joe are captured by Axos, who blatantly lie to Unit, saying, they messed up this machine, and we don't know. We have no idea where they went. Like, they just weren't here when we got here. But it's sort of like, well, then what do we know? And what do we know that is what is going to happen? It's like, how are they supposed to believe it? It's kind of a lie that you really, that it just sort of falls in on itself when you look at it. Like why? Like, it's, the doctor wouldn't just not be there. He would still, he would still be there if he did this. If he did this experiment, he would be the one who was there, not just like, I'm not there now, because, that's just sort of how this story goes. That, but the doctor is there. The doctor is on Axos' ship with Joe, and they've taken it back, and they go back to their ship, and they're essentially trying to get all the math out of the doctor so they can work out the TARDIS and basically have an unlimited food supply, because they're here to drain the Earth of its resources, like just of its energy, and essentially make it become a lifeless husk, killing everyone, which is a nice little science fiction-y idea that it's fun to explore, even if it really doesn't have all that much of a basis in actual science. It is, because that's a little, it's still a little silly, but it's still very much a fun idea. I like the way the story is going with it. Like, it's playing off of it pretty well. It's doing a lot of fun stuff there. And using Joe as a hostage is the way they do it. They basically make her start to age And they threaten, we're just going to age her to dust, and because we can't really harm you, but we can harm him. So yeah, it's a really, really good. That the doctor said the episode is really good, but also the master. The master was. The master is essentially just forced to. The master just has to gets himself to help with the unit, and he's essentially using the TARDIS and the TARDIS essentially so he can escape, and he has to work with the unit. And the big cliffhanger is, well, they've got this thing where they're going to destroy Axos as the last hope, if the master gets his freedom, and then, but they might destroy the doctor, and that is really, really good. But other than that, yeah, it's just that really the material spread just a little thin. So I'm going to give the Claws of Axos episode 3 a 7 out of 10. Alright, it is the 28th of April, 2018, and I just finished watching episode 4, the fourth and final episode of The Claws of Axos. And I have to say that The Claws of Axos episode 4 is not only really, really good, but it actually gives a very, very satisfying conclusion to the story. Again, some of the CSO is still a little dodgy, but, that's par for the course, and there are a couple of effects that really don't work. But other than that, the episode is pretty good. Definitely the pacing is much tighter than it was in episode 3, which I complained about. And really, the way they conclude the story is, I think it's really good. I like the way that the story the story ends. And it's a really fun time. Mainly, so you have Axos being sort of having their, this is Axos basically being having the last laugh, like, we are starting the nutrition cycle, and the doctor does something that isn't quite out of his character. As he's been wanting to get out of the off of Earth for a long, long while. What he does is he decides, Earth is kind of screwed, so I am going to make a deal with the Master. Yeah, he makes a deal with the Master to get off of the planet. Now, before we get to this, we have the escape from Axos, where the Doctor and Joe essentially have to run for their lives out of the ship of Axos. And it's actually really clever. The Doctor has Joe reciting a bunch of different numbers and things to so she doesn't have to, so she doesn't have so that Axos can't get into her mind and sort of control her like that. And that is something that I really, really like. I like the way that they make it so that it's I like the way that they make it so that it's not it's Joe having to sort of think her way out of the situation, which is really cool. And then after that, we get back to a lot of the episode is spent in the research station and in the Doctor's TARDIS, which I didn't mention this, but this is the first episode to have the TARDIS with a redesign, and if I'm going to be brutally honest, I like the redesign for the TARDIS. It looks. If we don't get to see too much of it, and I know that they changed it a little bit, but and they're using the same walls and everything, but the fact that this time it's actually painted, white to look like it's white, like it's supposed to be, because of course, green paint looks like it's white, when it's filmed in black and white. But this is all because we're all in color. We have a new TARDIS. The Time Rotor is a new design. It's green. Basically, so things, it looks like it is, it looks like it's a different sort of a different sort of story, a different sort of console. He's done a redesign, and it sort of also fits with the idea that he's been tinkering, and you know, and it's one of those things that really has a lot of it's really interesting. So you have that. That's being that's interesting, but you also what you have is the fact that that the Doctor and the Master, they have to work together, and Roger Delgado is great in these episodes. He's one of those. He's one of those actors who he just has this class, like, and no matter what, he just sort of is like, well, I'm going to try to get away from this because I'm trying to save himself. Like, the Doctor realizes that the Master might try to escape without him as they do repairs, so he takes just an essential component. It's like, well, I know this is an essential component. You don't have this component. When I well, when that happened, when that happened, when that happens, you have just this hilarious thing where, and the Doctor just eventually reveals that, yeah, I'm leaving without you guys. Screw you, Earth, I'm leaving. So then they decide to go to join Axos, where Axos sort of reveals that, basically reveals that, reveals that it's, he reveals eventually that, he tricked them into getting into a time loop, and the Master's almost certainly going with it, that's interesting. And then the highlight of the episode is actually the final scene where the Doctor comes back to Earth, and just sort of has to explain what he did, and he sort of does his arm in circles. They're like, a time loop, well, it's a loop, and there's time. And he's also like, well, did you come to Earth back on your own accord? It's like, well, yes. It's like, Doctor, well, no, it seems that I'm some sort of galactic. So just because this is one of those episodes that's really good like that, I'm going to give the episode a 9 out of 10. That being said, as this is the end of the line for The Claws of Axos, we averaged the scores of the 4 episodes to give the episode a final score of 8.25 out of 10. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It means a lot, especially as I've gotten a bit of a subscriber boom recently. I'm at 92 subscribers as of recording. Hopefully I go up. And, if I end up making it to 100, please leave in the comments if you want any sort of 100 subscriber schedule and sort of like what I can do, because I don't have any ideas on that. But other than that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in the Ultimate Doctor Marathon when we go into the only Big Finish audio drama for the Third Doctor that I will be doing with the Mega.